Hello and welcome back to the next edition of Force Book Chat. Today we are discussing a very, I would say, a path-breaking book in the sense that this is the kind of journalism which has become extinct in our part of the world. And this book is called Resisting Military Rule in Burma, Story of Mizima Media, Born in Exile, Banned in Myanmar. I hope everybody can see this. And I have been reading this for the last few weeks, and there are portions in the book which I kind of go back to again to understand whether I have understood it correctly or I have not understood it correctly, and I need to refresh what has been written. This book is co-authored by Nandita Haksar, who's sitting here, and So Mint, who is the founder editor of a media group in Myanmar called Mizima. It's a cross-platform group. They have a TV channel, they have a website, and you have a newsletter also. So
Yes, we do. We do. Yeah,
yes, so
we have what's
and
radio as well, shortwave radio.
okay, and I've seen your YouTube channel also. So now this book is a record of how Mizima was founded and how it manages to keep its neck above water and also continue to motivate people in Myanmar who are resisting the military rule there. Nandita has been, everybody knows Nandita, she doesn't need an introduction here. She is a human rights lawyer, she's an activist, she's an author, and she is a very good human being whose doors are always open to anybody looking for any kind of succor. So Nandita has helped So and his brother chronicle the story of Mizima. So thank you so much for your time, So and Sevan, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, I'm sorry if it's mispronounced. And thank you, Nandita, for agreeing to talk to us on this forum. My first question to you, So, is how are you? I read about your survival cancer. You're a cancer survivor. So, how is your health?
That's very good question to start with. Always that's what we used to say in the movement or in our life, we are surviving. So I'm surviving. It's tough, but I'm surviving. We are surviving.
Wonderful, and it's so heartening to see that you have not let that come in the way of your commitment to your work.
Yeah.
So tell me how you came to India, you hijacked a plane. I mean, it's a very famous story now. Uh, why did you think of starting a publication? How did
Okay.
you move from student activism? You could have done anything else. Why did you decide to become a journalist, a disseminator of news from Myanmar?
Yeah. First of all, thank you. Thank you for your time, for giving a chance for this interview. I actually really like to thank Auntie Natita as well for joining this interview. Okay, I will start with myself, but it is not just me or myself or someone. It's maybe a kind of an example or kind of a one story, but definitely that reflects and that connect with many people who are in the movement for democracy and human rights in Burma, Myanmar. I co-founded Mizima Media in 1998 in India when I was a refugee. There were many of my colleagues at the time, including co-founder Tintin Ao. We were refugees. We were guests. India sheltered us. India provided the space, not only space, not only hospitality, but also India basically helped us grow politically from being like I was 21 years old. Many of us were around 20 years those days. But India, people like Auntie Nandita, peoples from India have helped us. That is a part of my life and a part of many people's life to start with in those days. Why I co-founded Mizima? Yes, I was an activist. I was a part of the democracy movement. One of the main reasons one we thought of is because at the time, there were some international media which cover Burma from outside the country because there was no independent media in the country, in Burma, and foreign journalists were not allowed. Whatever the few international media which cover Burma from outside, we were grateful for them, grateful to them for their coverage on Burma or with all the difficulties. But when they cover that generally, it was like they talk of Aung San Suu Kyi, who is our leader, who was our leader. But how about the minorities in the country? How about the peoples? So we thought of by having our own local homegrown, home-built independent media, we can tell the stories. We can tell about the plight of the Burmese peoples for struggle for human rights and democracy. We definitely can tell about Aung San Suu Kyi and Nationally for Democracy and Myanmar military, which were main stakeholders or main players in the country. But there were also many others, particularly minorities within the country. And we also have minorities within the minorities. So we thought, apart from having more stories from Burma to go out to the country and more Burmese people to understand more about what is happening in the country and outside the country, we also thought that we could tell better stories by having our homegrown and home-built. That's why we set up. But more than that, we also want to be objective. That's why if you look at the name, Michima is a middle bed. Basically, it is a journalism. It is not taking sides. It is not extreme. When we say not taking side, it is not with one party or that another party or with one ideology or another ideology. It is basically to be with the peoples. We always have a say in the newsroom. We have to know pulse of the people. That's how we can report about the people. And that is what we call it objective and independent journalism. We have to talk about, we have to report about the people. So I will stop here, and maybe Auntie Nandita knew very well from the very beginning. So maybe Auntie Nandita may help more also to explain.
No, I have another question before I ask Nandita for her inputs. When you started Mizima, your idea was to tell the stories of people of Myanmar and to the world, showcase their stories to the world, or you wanted to tell the stories within the Myanmar also. You wanted the people of Myanmar living there to know what was happening in their country. So, who was your original audience when you thought of starting this?
It was a small beginning to focusing on the Burmese refugees in New Delhi. We ourselves were refugees. So we were focusing about our life, about our struggle, about our livelihood, about our whatever challenges and opportunities living as a refugee in India. That was so we started with that refugee stories, but also India-Burma relations, because we are a part of the relations between these great countries historically. So we wanted to one of the things, even until today, one of the things that we feel very badly is when we talk of refugees in India, or when we talk of the Burmese movement in India, or India-Myanmar, India-Burma border, or when we talk of India-Myanmar-Burma relations, it is very much neglected reporting, in terms of reporting and in terms of attention until today. After many years, after 30 years of struggle, still it is very much under reported, very much under attention. That is what Mizima wanted to play, or wanted to help push of these stories about India-Burma relations, about the Burmese refugees. We start with, we could not do in the beginning until if you will see in the book, until for 2 years when people like Seng Wen, who is managing editor, later joined the Mizima. We could not focus much what is happening in the country, but at least we start with refugees. And these are the stories we also want to tell the Burmese inside the country, Burmese outside, Burmese diaspora in different countries.
Right. Nandita, how did you get associated with Burmese refugees? You you started as a representative, as a legal representative for them, but how did your affection for them or your attachment with for them grow so much that you kind of became a refuge for them in India?
Well, as So is saying, that there is very little or almost no awareness about Burma, Myanmar as a country. And I think even today, the only thing that we seem to know, a vast majority of people, even educated people, is the name of Aung San Suu Kyi and nothing else. And we can barely pronounce her name. So I think it was a very enriching experience of knowing a whole country and its people because I was working in the Northeast, taking up cases on behalf mainly of Nagas who had been victims of army atrocities. So because I was taking up issue of human rights against Indian army atrocities, I could understand a little of what it meant to live under army rule. So these two factors. And I would say that this, as So said, this really not only underreported, it's a whole country next door to us in the midst of a civil war with the refugees coming in. And there is so little interest in Burma. And again and again, I find my fellow activists, I'm not even talking about others, who are saying, oh, but why are you so interested in these Burmese? As if they're some far away on another planet. Secondly, more immediately, this effect of whatever is happening inside Burma directly affects us in the Northeast. And since we are also unaware of what happens in the Northeast, there is a double ignorance. So for me, it was very important. It was a whole world, new world opening up, the new problems, and how these relationships between India and Burma are much more complex. And the only other thing that Indians seem to know about Burma is its relationship with Buddhism, coming of Buddhism. But if we look at history, the relationship between India and Burma it goes much before Buddhism. And of course, Buddhism is an important part. But there are many other dimensions to these relationships, including the relationship of the minority or the ethnic minorities living in Myanmar and the ethnic minorities living on our northeast border. So for me, it is, well, I made some very strong friendships. And of course, this book is a product of that friendship. But for me, it's been a very enriching experience to learn not only about Myanmar, but about Indian activism, its limitations in extending international solidarity.
This book also, so in the portion that he writes, he talks of the support he got in Delhi. I mean, from George Fernandez to a lot of other people he has mentioned in the book, Mrs. Kamala Bhasin and so on. So there was some sort of solidarity which was available to Burmese students in Delhi, at least in Delhi. So how fair is it then to say that there was a lack of compassion towards what was happening next door? If a lot of people were opening their doors to them, providing them access and as well as support.
Yeah, that's a good question. Sure. So that question is that some of these contacts were revived by So and Mizima themselves and Thintenong, who's co-editor. For instance, the one of the big support they got was from Colonel Lakshmi Sehgal of INA. Now, I knew theoretically that Lakshmi Sehgal had been in Burma, but it was through So and Thintin that I met Lakshmi Sehgal. Okay. So some of these contacts were really revived by them. Then there are other contacts, which I think, like, for instance, Kamla Bhasin, it was I who introduced them to some of the people. So that was a second. And then third, for instance, George Fernandez, George Fernandez had his own interest. It was a political interest, and it was his anti-China understanding that brought him close to the Burmese cause. But in addition, he and Jaitley were very open and very warm-hearted and opened their door even when he was defense minister. And many Burmese refugees were actually housed and staying in our defense minister's house. And he came in for criticism for that, but he was a genuine, although we had differences politically, and as I said to So, that it was So who brought a lot of Indians together who would not have worked together. So, so there were some memories of a older generation of Burma, which I think Mizima helped to revive.
Right. But do you think that sort of connection which this older generation had no longer exists? This group of empathetic people in who understood or who felt that there is a need for solidarity with refugees coming from Myanmar. This sentiment no longer exists.
No, I won't say no long, as I must make a distinction because that sentiment is very strong in the Northeast. So it's very
Okay.
strong in Mizoram, for instance. It's very strong in Nagaland. Some of the tribes in the Northeast, they extend across the border. And the famous thing, of course, is Longwa, the village, which the international border goes through the village. Half of the village is in Myanmar and half in India.
Yes, actually, I
That
was not referring to this. I'm sorry for interrupting you because this is, the border population always, there's so many connections. The divided families, they do trade with one another, they go to the same markets or weekly hearts and all that. So I was not talking about the border people. I'm talking about the urban India, the educated, intellectual India. So that sort of a empathy you think is missing in this category of people.
Yes, I don't now, for instance, I think So will know better, but certain universities now actually teach Myanmar studies, and some of them teach Burmese. So the universities are sort of slowly taking interest, and because of this war, but the kind of interest they should take, the kind of role that intellectuals could play in articles, if you see the newspapers, they have almost nothing on
That's true.
what is happening in Myanmar and how it relates strategic humanitarian crisis. There's almost next to nothing on that.
Yeah, right. So your magazine, or sorry, your publication, Mizima Media, it's emerged from your resistance as a student activist. So what Nandita was mentioning before we started to record, it was part of a movement. So now a movement is obviously against something. So a movement, it has to be by definition partisan because you are standing up for certain values and you are standing against certain things. So you think that sort of partisanship also kind of shaped the work that Mizima has been doing or wants to do in the future?
For me and for many of us, a movement is not exactly against something. A movement is for something.
Okay.
What that means is a movement, we are committed to principles, we are committed to democracy, human rights. In Burma case, we are committed to federal union, working together, living together. That is a movement. So we are for something. And independent media basically play a role in building that something, in nurturing that something, in supporting that whatever we are committed to. Of course, media journalism is there is very strong journalism, and strong journalism means basically is you write what you can prove near to the truth, at least near to the truth. That is what. And we have to, as a professional, we are like doctors. I mean, I don't need to explain this to you, but that is what I'm sort of trying to explain. We are like doctor, we are like lawyer, we are journalists, so we practice our profession. But we are also a part of the society. We are also a part of for something. That is what the Mizima from the day one. And if you look at the people who started Mizima, who were a part of the movement. That is what we have been doing. That's why I always feel, I mean, of course, it is, but some people might ask, are you feeling bored after many years? No. We continue what we have been doing. I'm very sure that we will continue to do until until we die. That's all, because we are doing this for building a part of the movement for democracy. And of course, there are other forces and others, like for example, in Myanmar military, in Burma case, the Burmese military junta, which oppress the people, which suppress the people. We have to expose this, like airstrikes that they are doing. The other day, there was an airstrike in Rakhine region, 20 children in a school, and 2 teachers were killed instantly by the airstrike. And we have to expose that. Then the Burmese military were not like us to do that. That's why they ban us, or they try to ban us. I mean, we are sitting in Myanmar, but they try to ban us wherever they control. But so that becomes they are against us. I mean, we are not against anyone. We are, I mean, because we do what our work, we do our profession as a part of the movement, as a part of the nation building.
Sinwat, you have described very eloquently when the coup happened and when the military took over the government. So you have mentioned that you predicted that this is going to happen tonight, but it did not happen that night. Then your friend called you up and said, "No, are you all right? Because there has been a military takeover." You have described it in great detail. Would you like to recall some of those details? How did it feel like? Because you had put your stuff in the car and you were moving around. Obviously, it is a frightening moment. You had a sense of responsibility, but didn't you worry about your own personal safety at that point, safety of people who were working for you? What all was going through your mind?
Actually, the kind of a worrisome environment was have been happening before the coup. Since after the election result came up, and the election result which the commander-in-chief didn't expect, and he thought his backbone party would win and would be the president, that sort of thing. And then after the election result, there were exchange of political, on a kind of argument and those and happening. That was these were the signal for us, and COP is coming, COP is looming, and like this, tomorrow morning there will be a convention of first parliament after the election.
Right.
That would be the first one. So we were expecting that, but on the other hand, I were also monitoring the troop movement in Yangon, because if the coup, and then there will be a significant troop movement, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen so that I thought, okay, tonight it will not happen. They may postpone, some other day, and I think if I remember correctly, I slept around 2 a.m. And then around 3:30 or 3:45, and a friend of mine from called me, and he rang up, and he was asking, where are you? And then are you locked up? And because he thought a journalist would be arrested, and he saw the name, some of the journalists' name who were rumors to be arrested. And suddenly, I woke up, and then I pick up all the stuff which I need immediately, and put it in my bag, and then put it in the trunk of my car in the back. And then I was going around Yangon. Particularly, I was checking on the military installment, and because I want to see how the militaries are moving and have happening, and the airport, Yangon International Airport, there were not significant activities. So but they cut off the telephone lines and the internet in this morning. But I have been going around and so checking all these things. That when I heard about the coup in my mind, okay, and that was not big surprise, and because we were expecting, but it's some sort of losing something dejected for you, because this kind of bad scenario would happen, and this will be a long years again, because our first experience it was very long.
Your first experience?
Yeah, the first experience of the coup.
Okay.
The coup in 1988.
In 1988. It was
Right.
a very long year. And
Okay.
then the life of a youth, it's all gone.
Okay. But apart from what you were hearing, that there is a coup on the ground in the city of Yangon where you were driving around, what were the signs which gave you the idea that the military has taken over? It has deposed the elected government.
People were talking everywhere, and everywhere in Yangon, people were talking about the coup, and people were curious, and people were asking one another what is happening, and so I can see, that they're worried. Everybody is worried about the coup.
Okay. And then when you moved to into the forests and you continued to broadcast from there, what was that experience like? What were the difficulties you faced?
Let me say, why? Because we were, as Simon was saying, we were expecting a coup. Of course, we are prepared. Of course, we are not predicted. we don't know exactly when the coup will happen. Of course, we were expecting that day, 1st February 2021, they would probably stage the coup. So we had a meeting and all this before it happened. One of the questions that we have to ask ourselves, that was before 1st February 2021, or leading towards that is, in case of coup, what are we going to do? We have options. It is not that without option. Shall we stop Mizima? That is what the military will want us to do. Or shall we continue Mizima? And we unanimously, very painfully, because we knew that with the coup, there will be sufferings and pains. There will be many lives involved. So, but we decided we will continue Mizima. We see the that decision, and was basically we sort of relocate to other parts of the country, particularly controlled by the ethnic minorities, Karen and Karani, particularly where we have friends and part of the network, and we relocated. So people like me and some others, we relocated to Karen area controlled by the Karen National Union, the Karen movement fighting for the self-determination for decades. So we relocated. The people like another set of the group led by Sewin traveled to the area controlled by the Karani, another minority nationality in Burma, so that wherever we are able to continue, so that we can continue our work. So another one is television, because when we broadcast, I think when you have a television channel, you need a lot of equipment, a lot of human resources, a lot of preparations. You need studio, you need internet, you need a satellite to broadcast. So that was a big challenge, how you will move and quietly, because we cannot let this known to the Myanmar military. So within a week, we arrived in current state on 8th February. That is a week after coup. And there is quite a lot of preparations we have to do before coup and immediately after coup. Continue the work again with the support and with the help and with the shelter provided by the minority nationalities in Burma, who also feel very much the same as us, because they have been facing this onslaught of Myanmar military against against their people, violating human rights, violating basic fundamental rights for decades. So that is what we were able to continue, and a lot of work. And just to inject here, 7 Mizima colleagues, including Mizima co-founder Tende Aung, were arrested, not only arrested, tortured very badly. And as of course, I can say now, sort of without any emotion, much. Now they are released after many of them serving their sentence. They are released, but it was a huge suffering, huge pain. People, but this is not just Mizima alone. There are many independent media outlets whose offices were raided.
I'm sorry, interrupting you. Tintin Aung is your wife. Is that correct?
She was my partner. She was my wife. Yes,
Right.
we co-founded Mizima
Right.
together.
So when she was arrested, what was going through your mind? There was personal, professional, idealism, everything kind of pulsed.
Again, it was not unexpected, because we have to expect something like this, very painful ones. We have to expect, and I think almost all of us, we have to expect. But it was a very painful, because I mean, we are nearly 60. She was not well, and she was, the military junta. I mean, that is the kind of the way they do, is they really try to break down the people's spirit. That is what they always trying to attempt, and she was subjected to that, and I knew that she will be subjected to that kind of breaking her down. But she was very strong person. I mean, very much. I mean, stronger than many of us. A very strong fighter. But even that, so it was very difficult. But again, we have to also see she's not alone. I mean, she's very important for us. She's very important for me. But there are also many others, and even within Mizima, many of my colleagues are at the same time facing similar treatment or similar pains and sufferings. So we have to save everyone. We have to save everyone as best as possible, and it was very painful. She was in jail for nearly a year, and many of our colleagues at the same time were in another. She was arrested with one of the young Mizima people, Mizima staff. He's Chin national. So when I say, okay, she's strong enough, she can resist, she can face this. But how about the young people who are also facing the same or more or less this kind of treatment? So that is what we have to handle. We have to face it. We have to save as much as possible, and I think we did it. Finally,
we have been dealing with the Burmese military and for whole life. We have expected that their brutality, and even though we don't know how far they will go, but we have prepared for the worst scenario. That is a kind of things that we have to put it in ourselves.
Nandita, the structure of the book was decided by you. It's a very complicated kind of a book to write. You have so many narrators, weaving together all the narration and also maintaining the continuity. There's a chronology to the way the book progresses. How did you work with this? How much of effort did this require?
Well, actually, it required quite a bit of effort for two reasons. One is that at that moment, So was very ill and he was in hospital. Sinwin was somewhere else. I was we were in three different places. And the other journalist, Joseph Paul, was in a fourth place. And somewhere, I think that one thing which I think all of us wanted to convey, apart from the personal stories, is the horror of 36 years of military rule.
Right.
So it was very difficult. And it somehow fitted in because as we wrote, the book grew on its own. I mean, a lot of books grow on their own. And so, first of all, it was So's story. And first, he wanted to write it. He was in hospital. And in fact, on almost at a time when we didn't know whether he would survive. And second was that then Sinwin, I thought, should write because when So was in exile in India, Sinwin was still in Myanmar. So we get both sides of what happens. And also we get another look into what is happening in the country. And in this book, so while So is dealing with one set of problems, trying to build a media house in exile without any rights. As you know, refugee rights are not recognized in India. So it's an incredible story of a refugee being able to do that. It's also a story of how there's democratic space in India if we try to use it. That's also there's an underlying story. But Sinwin also in this book, and I think anyone who is a journalist would be very interested in that part, is how one cyber cafe in Yangon, and he manages to send stories in Spanish language, hoping that nobody knows Spanish in the
Right.
cyber cafe, and then it is decoded, and neither Sinwin nor Spanish, and how he sent stories from inside Burma so Mizima could publish it from India. So the saga of Mizima is an amazing story, I think, in any context. And that it was happening right here in India and we were unaware, I thought was something which needed to be told. More than that, a story like this would have been lapped up by the Western journalists or Western writers and published. And I asked So, I said, you're not going to get money for this. We will not get a publisher. Why don't you publish abroad? And he said, no, because this type of story and this type of writing only in India can be published because they will be interested in sort of dramatizing personal stories rather than their story of an institution building.
Right.
So this third, and I must say that I don't think many of your audience hearing So and Senmin will understand fully the kind of courage, raw courage, that they and the Burmese people have shown throughout this, their fight against the junta and the cruelties to which this junta is capable. For instance, just now, the area which he said when they bombed or aerial bombing, that same area was affected by the worst earthquake. So while their citizens are dealing with an earthquake, they are aerial bombing. And at that point, we as India are not giving the kind of humanitarian assistance that we should be giving. So this book, I think, was also a part of a desire that this story be told of incredibly courageous journalism, but also of the other sides of not the official India, but the unofficial India, which does react if it is told the story
Right.
and it reaches the people.
You know, you are you are no stranger to the media situation in India. The way the Indian media has been operating is corporatized and driven by the bottom line, the profit margin that they can accrue. Uh, do you think it's a fair thing to say that the independent media is born only during strife, during oppression? You need that sort of political climate for resistance to grow and resistance through media to grow. Because if it is not there, then a lot of complacency and profit mongering develops, or invested interest in profit within the media develops. Do you think it's an apt statement to make?
Not entirely, because there is a media which is sold out. Even in Myanmar, that was sold out. For instance, I would really like to say, because I don't think these two are going to tell you, that as he said, there were options. So while he was a refugee in India, both of them were refugees in India, they had the option of resettlement. They did not take it. They did not go to America or Canada or Norway or anywhere they would have been welcome. They took the very difficult option of staying in India, not having money, and struggling. Second option was that should they go back to Myanmar when democracy had not fully come back, they took the second option of going back into Myanmar and trying to establish media, in which they did in very difficult circumstances. Third option was to wind up and again take resettlement, and the offer was given to them. Another offer was that let's sell Mizima and okay. And that offer was given when, when So is actually on deathbed at that point, and Senben had a heart attack. He's got 2 stents. So I wanted this as an inspiration also for Indian journalists, because we are going through a crisis. We are in a situation of fascism, in a situation where journalists are being locked up and they're being beaten, they're not being able to do anything. But even in that, there are journalists who have taken the risk. There are journalists who are speaking out, and those are the non-corporate journalists. So I wouldn't say that in India we don't have it, but we do have it. But India is also very large. So even if you have 1 or 2 or 3 journalists in one part of India, they're Kashmiri journalists who are very, very courageous. They're journalists in the border areas who are courageous. But there are journalists in Delhi who have also been very courageous. But somehow, because of a lack of kind of a united vision, everyone is isolated. And I thought this story is something which should really inspire us, because these choices they made were not ideal choices. They were compromises. And I think one of the most interesting parts of the decisions So took and Mizima took were the kind of compromise they had to make in a situation of complete army rule, which perhaps has some lessons for us.
What compromise was that, So, and how difficult was it to make that compromise?
I think Auntie Nanita was referring to the period when Burma was about to sort of open up, led by the Myanmar military. Of course, they didn't do voluntarily by themselves. There were a lot of internal pressure. Because of the struggle of the peoples, because of the support from the international community to the democracy movement. But it was not a democracy when we returned to. We knew very well. And when we say it was not a democracy, definitely there were limitations. There was apart from danger to ourselves or to whoever worked from the organization like Bizima, which was banned in Myanmar, even for those days. There were, apart from their risk and the danger that they have, it was also within the very limited space where we are allowed to work with. That is what I call it. We call it a kind of you have to compromise in that. We knew that how it will be a limited space. There will be challenges. It was not what we wanted. It's not ideal situation that we wish to, but we decided to go back. We decided to go back and expand whatever the limited space, because at the end of the day, philosophically or theoretically, or practically, you are a democracy. If you don't expand your democracy, it will get shrunk. But if you have a limited space, if you can expand it, it can expand. And that is what we decided to sort of continue the fight and struggle inside the country. Of course, within that, there were many challenges. There was no level playing field. When we returned, we even didn't have the citizenship back. For in the beginning, we have to wait. So there are many. You have read in the book, and there are many sort of details of the one. But that limited space, which we try. There were also many positive things. Just to give you an example. For example, we were able to train hundreds and hundreds of young journalists in that limited space. and who today are leading many of the independent media houses for democracy, and they continue the struggle. Within that limited space, say when was head of the training director of the Myanmar Journalism Institute, that all of us put together in Myanmar in around 2014. And that trained hundreds and hundreds of Myanmar journalists. If you look at today, who are the senior editors of the independent media houses, they are the ones now who are doing the work.
Right. Right. You know, Mizima is still banned in Myanmar, but you continue your broadcasts, you continue your YouTube channel videos and all that. Who is watching Mizima in Myanmar?
First
How
of
are they
all,
accessing it?
yes, first of all, today Burma is very different from the situation before 2010. Today, Burma is not entirely controlled by the Myanmar military junta. Myanmar military junta control less than half of the country's territories. Where we are today, I mean, in Myanmar, we are sitting today, is not controlled by Myanmar military anymore. It is definitely under the control of the resistance forces. So more than half of the country's territories where we are able to work today, and the same thing, the people the people who are living under the control of the resistant forces, different resistant forces, are able to watch, able to read, able to, because they are not controlled by the Myanmar, they are not subject to the control of the Myanmar military junta. That is first thing. Second thing, of course, the people who are under the in the areas controlled by the Myanmar military junta, and also able to access our news and information. For example, our Facebook is 21 million followers, YouTube is more than 3 million followers, and television is more than 20 million viewers. Why? Because of the technology. Yes, Myanmar military banned the website of Mizima, but people who are watching or who are reading, they use VPN, they use proxies and that is what it is. In fact, within the last 4 years after the coup, our readership has grown tremendously. From 18 millions of the Facebook, just want to give an example, 18 million followers, now more than 21 million followers. I mean, basically, so people, that lastly, it is technology. Yes, we have to also, a good thing about today media work is their advantages. You can use the technologies. So we cannot use the release centers for television broadcast in the country because Myanmar military can come on board, but we use the satellite. So that's how we are broadcasting our television through satellite. And there are dishes very much available throughout the country. And that's how people have access to Mizima media platforms, including television channel and shortwave radio. Again, shortwave radio is satellite. We broadcast through satellite.
How do you manage to get your funding to do, because obviously you would have donors who are contributing to the work you're doing, but with the government crackdown on Mizima, the ban on the on your website, you all being in exile, because right now also you are doing this interview from very close to the border. How do you still manage to do this? Aren't your accounts frozen? Isn't the trail of money stopped at various levels? How does it work?
Between 1998 and 2010, when we were in exile in India and Thailand, as an independent media, we depended on the international donors and supporters because we were refugees. Then we told the donors, thank you so much for your support, because when we were refugees, we were back in the country from 2011 and until 2021. By that time, that period, we tried to survive on our own, basically through the advertisements, through our own revenues. That's what we were. Then after the coup, we lost all the revenues, particularly advertisements, because no one, whoever put advertisements in our TV channel or YouTube, they will be subject to the danger or given by the Myanmar military. So we lost all our revenues from on 1st February. Then we have to go back and we requested the international community on 8 February 2021, please support us. And we got the support. But again, the support is always will be limited. We know they were limited with the U.S. Funding freeze on 24th February 2025. It will be limited, and there will be less and less because the world have many conflicts and many issues, whatever we like it or not. There, so we also have to depend on ourselves. So we have our own small revenues picking up. We have to, but again, one U.S. funding freeze, which basically contributed, just to be clear, how much is 20% of our annual budget, not the whole one. We have many other resources from different donors and different countries, but U.S. funding freeze was there, 20%. What we had an internal meeting, what to do? We lost 20%. And almost everyone in the meeting, inside and outside the country, said, we will continue with whatever, because at the end of the day, it is a commitment. It is your determination whether you want to continue your work or not. And we know today we are facing a lot of issues with the financial restraints, financial lack of the enough financing for our operations, operating with more than 80 people and different places. And we need a generator, we need the internet, we need this, that, because it's very difficult. It's not normal where you can, where you have an office and you work. We have to operate in different circumstances and situations. So we need money. But at the end of the day, it is your commitment and your decision, whether you will want to continue your work or not. And we want to continue, and we will continue our work with whatever what happens.
All the best to you, so. And thank you so much, Nandita, for what you do and for bringing the story of Mizima to India. I hope this inspires a lot of journalists in India.
For your time and for